If revolution was a movie, I'd be theme music. Time to ignite what I spit is lighter fluid. Stepping into it, fixed rays, such a glorious design. Marching into the biggest fight of our lives. Time to spoil the revolution.
Welcome to the BLKFLA experience. We are the cultural archive for the Black political movement in the state of Florida, where our purpose is to help you reimagine a Florida where Black people are able to live in freedom, equity, and authenticity. I'm your host, Jamal Steele, and we are taking this time to dive into all things Black politics and Black culture. So let's get right into it. I have the distinct honor today of having on a great friend of mine. I get called the work husband by this person. I get called all the time when this person wants to talk, not just politics, but also Black culture, sports, wrestling, and all things Memphis. Why? Because she's from Memphis. And she just happens to just be just a really dope person overall. Why is she on BLKFLA though? Because she spent so much time organizing in the sanctity, the sanctium that is the state of Florida. And I use that term very sarcastically. That she has quite enough knowledge about what goes on down here. And she gave a little scraggly beard kid from the city of Atlanta, now Jacksonville, Florida, a chance to be a part of something great by being a part of the hiring team to bring him in as the North Florida regional organizer. Because at the time, she was the Florida State coordinator for this awesome organization that you all know about. It's called Black Voters Matter. I digress. But now she operates as the senior policy manager for Black Voters Matter. BLKFLA, y'all welcome Rhyane Wagner to the space. Yes.
Friends in high places.
All the things, friends in very high places. I just, if I say this to you all the time, if it wasn't for you, honestly, if it wasn't for you and Tammy, shout out to Tammy Sawyer, out here doing big things, trying to get this special sessions court clerk deal over in Shelby County. So shout out to you, Tammy. But honestly, if it wasn't for you and Tammy, man, like I really wouldn't be in the space that I'm in right now. And I really do appreciate the both of y'all for just, taking the chance, overlooking the fact that I had a nice 102 temperature and COVID.
Oh yeah, you were sick.
I was sick the day of my interview. I was out. Like,
it's okay. I've done interviews at a gas station in my car before.
It was bad. It was very bad. So, but no, thank you for joining on to BLKFLA. And so we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it. So the first segment of BLKFLA, as always, is What We Talm Bout. So what we talking about today? April 1st, the Florida Supreme Court. Some of our favorite people, Ryan. Some of our favorite people. Mm-hmm. The Florida Supreme Court decided to approve 2 ballot initiatives for this year's 2024 ballot. Those will be Amendment 3 and Amendment 4. What are they, you ask? Amendment 3 is recreational marijuana. I know. I'm shocked just as much as anybody else. I thought we were just gonna stop with medicinal here in the state of Florida. I thought that was gonna be it. Boom, case closed. And Amendment 4 is, of course, the illustrious reproductive rights / abortion ballot initiative. So, but also on the same day, the Florida State Supreme Court decided to uphold the 15-week abortion ban that was voted in favor by the state legislature and signed by your friend and mine, Ronald Dion DeSantis, y'all governor,
okay.
Not my governor. y'all governor. Signed into law in 2022. So, they took a minute, but decided, hey, we're going to uphold this 15-week abortion ban. What does that mean? That means in 30 days or under 30 days now, May the 1st, we will not have a 15-week abortion ban. We will have a 6-week abortion ban here in the state of Florida. And the only way that can be stopped is if 60% of Florida's population votes yes on Amendment 4. Your thoughts, Ryan? Because I know you have some.
I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. Generally speaking, the trend has been voters have decided that they want to protect their rights, reproductive justice, and I say repro justice on purpose, right? This is more than just about access to abortion. Because even before Roe v. Wade was passed, wealthier, privileged white women found a way to go get one. So let's keep it a buck, right? And a lot of the abortion providers were also, Planned Parenthood also did low-cost mammograms, all the things that normally Black and brown women who were in a certain income bracket would not be able to have access to. So I think there's a larger conversation about control over particularly white women, in that we're in a situation where now there are attacks on IVF, there are attacks on birth control coming on the way. These Republican governors saw the Handmaid's Tale, like, this is brilliant. We should totally do this in real life. And so it's about control of our bodies. Let's be real, they're pro-birth. They don't give a damn about Black children when they're born after they get here.
Right.
Black children, Black boys specifically are seen as criminals from the moment they come into this world. So the conversation is very nuanced, but overall it's about control, right? And making white women have more babies than us, because they see this multiracial democracy coming, and their solution to that is, well, we got to force white women to have more babies, right? So it's about control. And it's about control who gets to have babies.
Yeah.
And because they don't give a damn about ours, right? It's very clear that Tommy Tuberville did not know what IVF was. And it was wild to me. And then last week, seeing articles about, scientists finally studying women's bodies. So there's a lot
in
to
2024.
unpack. But 2024, right? Now you're studying us. But what you got those blue pills out with the quickness. There's probably a committee on those blue pills.
The blue pill committee.
I say that in jest, but maybe a little bit.
It is.
But it's about, generally speaking, the voters have been like, even Republican women, don't touch my things. Okay. It's clear with Tommy Tuberville. No, you know what? Maybe you don't talk about women's bodies. You don't even have a clue of what they do. You don't even, beyond childbirth, you have no clue about what IVF does for people who are struggling with infertility. Come on.
Right.
But what's wild about that Alabama case, and I'm skipping around a little bit, but they're all connected, is Kay Ivey still signed a bill that stated that an embryo was a whole child, right? IVF ultimately they reversed course, but it didn't reverse the fact that there was a judge who decided that embryos were whole people that had jobs and could support themselves. But again, white men, like, you all don't even know. It's very clear that you have no idea how a woman's body operates. And this larger need for control and to dictate the role women play in the United States as a whole. We couldn't have bank accounts until I think it was like 1973 on our own without the approval of the male figure in our lives.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who didn't know that. And I'm like, hey, we couldn't always buy a home on our own or have a bank account, or I could go on.
Like, I just literally found out that the home situation, like,
I think you had to have somebody sign for you that was like, it was wild.
Yeah. And that didn't start until the 80s.
That's our mom's generation. It's not our grandmother. It's our mothers, because it was a direct response to women in many ways joining the workforce.
Right.
We're still fighting for equal pay. Okay. So to have this happen with Dobbs, I feel like we're damn near year 2 now. Like, with Dobbs, like, the powers that be knew exactly what's going to happen once you put control over that back to the states. Okay, because these same southern states would have kept us enslaved. Remember that states' rights argument for this around Civil War and all of that crap? And it was really about the ability to own other human beings. It had nothing to do with...
And that's always the thing that they bring up during the Civil War too. It's, it was states' rights. States' rights.
And I hate to break it to the Republicans. Abraham Lincoln didn't give a damn about emancipating slaves. He cared more about preserving the Union. And he said if there was a way he could do it without, ridding the country of slavery, he would have done it. So let's stop whitewashing the real ways in which even these former presidents that, are put on a pedestal now were involved in, the industry of, because it was also an economic engine that built this country and turned it into, what we know today, an industrial revolution. There wouldn't have been one without slavery. And this country, quite frankly, being built off our backs for free. Okay. So I digress, but the attacks on birth control are coming. And quite frankly, once the Shelby v. Holder decision was made, many of us in movement space, especially Black folks, were like, they're going to come for the other stuff.
Yeah.
So what, last term, it was affirmative action. And now we're starting to see the domino effect of that, not just on college campuses. Nationally, they want to also attack the ways in which affirmative action have leveled the playing field in corporate spaces. Mm-hmm. And I say level with an acknowledgement that we still don't have enough Black CEOs. We still don't have enough Black women. There's still nuance to that conversation, but generally speaking, they're coming for all the things we fought for. And quite frankly, legislated in court, mind you, the courts have become their first line of defense and not that check and balance that it previously was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. You have a former president who's hell bent on turning this country into an authoritarian dictatorship. He said as much. Project 2025 lays it out. And this need to push women back into the House. And is part of that. Right. And so while I am very, very excited about this ballot initiative, and Lord knows I was like, Florida might be the last domino to fall with it. But given how Ohio and issue 1 went, I was like, okay, maybe, Florida, we could do this. Realistically do this. Yeah. But it's only right that it goes to the voters at this point, because our courts and legislative bodies specifically have proven that they don't give a damn about what we want, right? It's no coincidence that one of the justices, Justice Kennedy, I believe is his name, is married to this person in the state legislature
who put up the 15-week ban.
She either put up the 15-week ban or 6-week ban, and so
no, let me take that back. It was a 6-week. Yeah.
And so it's not a conflict of interest for you that your wife is behind all of this, and okay, right, and so and I could go on about Clarence Thomas and them. Y'all should have listened to Anita Hill.
So we've had this conversation, you and I, multiple amounts of times, of how much the Black community, while attempting to vote in a liberal sense, and I use that in air quotes, the Black community is historically conservative on certain issues. Abortion and reproductive justice being one of them. Why is a ballot initiative? Because we're going to come back to Amendment 3 and recreational marijuana in a minute. Why is a ballot initiative like Amendment 4? Why should that be important to Black people, especially when it comes to protecting Black women, which is a core value for the organization that we are a part of?
I think the key to that is really speaking to the healthcare crisis that the Dobbs decision kind of led up to, right? You're seeing women who do want to have children having to wait in parking lots till it's so bad that they damn near die to receive care, right? Because these white men didn't think about that part, right? And the Black maternal health rate is way higher than even with white women. And that needs to be addressed, right? Yeah. There's already a sort of mistrust of a warranted in many ways. If you think about, I think it was the Tuskegee experiment.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about Henrietta Lacks, there is very real mistrust of the medical system. And I'll be the first to tell you, like, it seems like in this country, at least, medicine is more about business than patient care and well-being, right? So, and that spills out into how Black women are treated. We're oftentimes not believed when there's an issue. You heard about Jessica Petway. Mm-hmm. Right? They kept telling her it was fibroids, wouldn't listen to her. And she ultimately had cancer at 36 years old. So there are very real concerns that have to be addressed, and really framing it around, this is a healthcare crisis.
Right.
Right. Because if you don't believe in abortion, don't have one. But when white men are deciding for all of us, and Republican women too, Republican women were voting overwhelmingly as well in states like Ohio to protect bodily autonomy. So I just want to make that clear. This is not necessarily partisan related. Okay. The Dobbs decision had detrimental effects just on reproductive health care on its own, and who got access and what you like. And then some of the states, it was so vague, like doctors didn't even know I don't even know how to proceed. Mm-hmm. And having women leave the state, and then states implementing laws that treated that as human trafficking if you start an abortion elsewhere. So, I think obviously this goes beyond access to abortion. This is a reproductive justice care conversation. And Black and brown women are in many other conversations, we're the ones to first feel it
Right.
Right. Like I said before, wealthy white women gonna find a way. Even if
Always.
it means they gotta fly to Canada or wherever the hell they gotta fly to get, or fly to California, because Gavin Newsom said y'all can come here. We're protecting all of it. He made it sound like the West Coast defense, like he had a sports analogy with it, like it was him, the governor of Oregon, and I believe the governor of Washington State, that said we're gonna be the safe zone. But that's cute. But you know how much a ticket costs to the West Coast? On top of hotels, on
Yes.
top of actually going to get the abortion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the conversation I need Black conservatives to hear. This is way beyond abortion. And to be honest, these white men don't give a shit about Black boys when they're born, after they're born.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Absolutely.
If you
And
so pro-life, we should have already had paid maternity and paternity leave, 6 months minimum. Daycare, these parents should not have to worry about the exorbitant cost of daycare. These are conversations that are simple in other countries. And we are still at 6 weeks maternity leave. And anybody with children knows 6 weeks is not enough in many ways.
none
Women
at
who
all
have had
whatsoever.
babies talk about their fourth trimester being brutal. So miss me with this pro-life crap. It's only certain types of women and women you won't having babies. And you've made that very clear, because really what it's about is your fear and of this country no longer being a predominantly white, in your mind, Christian nation.
As if we ever were, though.
Like, I mean, it was whole ass indigenous tribes here before Christopher Columbus, and I could go on. He was technically a Dominican Republic, but even that is something that's controversial, saying in the state of Florida, like whose history gets taught. Like Ron wants American, he wants European history taught at the AP level, but not African American history, as if we didn't play a role in building this country and making it what it is. So it's very blatant, and there's levels to it. What did we say? It was Jim Crow 3.0.
Yes.
These folks have gotten smart. These not your garden variety racists. They know policy. They left the Trump administration, started working for the Heritage Foundation, started writing policy. This is not, these not some dumb hillbillies.
Like they are well versed, and as many abortion funds that we have in the state of Florida, it's still going to be extremely hard for people to just hop on planes, go to California, hop on planes, go to this area here to try to get abortions, but even worse, we're now putting people in the dangerous space of possibly having unsafe abortions, because they're not going to stop.
Well, I mean, and at 6 weeks, most women don't know they're pregnant. And how wild it is what happened in North Carolina. You had 2 Democrats switch sides. And they ended up with, like, North Carolina was like that safe zone for a minute for a lot of these repro justice. Like women would go to North Carolina, but that's not even.
That's not an option anymore either.
Yeah. Because Trisha Cotter. Like it's one, the Democrats need to do a better job of vetting their folks. Like, because I had a feeling she was probably never really a Democrat because of her area of North Carolina. She probably knew she couldn't win as a Republican. But that's just my theory. That's not the opinion of my organization. I just want to make that clear.
Right.
But yeah, it's like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. What I will say is forcing your average voter to understand what ballot initiatives do, really pushing people to get involved with forms of direct democracy that they may not have before or knew that was an option, right?
Yeah.
People are paying attention to the courts at the state level in ways that I have never seen.
Yeah, because I actually want to speak on that. So, shout out to Rep Anna Escamani, friend of the podcast. Anna put this picture up on her IG. I grabbed the picture and placed it up on my IG. It's a picture of two state Supreme Court justices. One of which looks strangely black. Like I want to point that out. Like she looks really black. I need for that to be understood. So these justices' names are Renata Francis. Yes, that's definitely a black name. That is absolutely a black name. Renata Francis and Meredith Sasso. These
We're
are
up
two.
for merit retention.
These two justices. These two justices almost blocked both Amendment 3, the recreational marijuana ballot initiative, and Amendment 4. And as Ryan so eloquently stated, both of their seats are up for retention this year on the 2024 ballot. I don't know. I feel like a no vote would help them understand why the decisions you make have consequences.
Well, and we're in a place where a lot of these folks aren't scared of losing their jobs because they were dependent on an electorate that wasn't paying attention. I won't ever say, because I also hate the term low information.
Right.
Voters aren't stupid, generally speaking. They may not know every single nuance you and I do, but trust, if the information is out there to be shared and given, and it's tied to some things that they care about, they're going to absorb it, right? Like that, people aren't stupid. And I hate that the Dobbs decision, like, was the impetus for this, but whatever. Get in how you fit in.
That's it.
Right? So Florida, I think, is one of very few states with merit retention. So, if you don't like somebody, pink slip.
They can get kicked off.
Many states, once they're in, they're in. But flip side to that is, I'm seeing more and more come out. Like I think we have 3 in Florida that are part of Federalist Society. So having those conversations about ALEC, Federalist Society, which they're right wingers, they pad our courts, right? Those conversations are happening more and more. And I could have a whole discussion about the impacts, 10 plus years out from Citizens United, right?
Right.
So you have billionaires just playing with their money in different states. David Uihleins and your Koch brothers, they're perennial enemies of democracy. Koch brothers have been around a lot. So if you've heard of Georgia Pacific printing paper and toilet paper, that's them.
That's them.
Among other things, they have many other business interests. So a lot of these proxy fights, I don't want to say, I hate using that term because they're very much important.
Yeah.
Are happening. They're in coordination, right? These are not coincidences. Marijuana is another one. Like Florida, as quiet as it's kept, should have been on the recreational marijuana. It's states that I'm like, how they get it before us, before Florida?
Right. Right. I'm like, the state of Washington is recreational.
But I also want, if it's passed, you know how this goes with Ron DeSantis, right? He passed rights restoration, 2018.
Poll tax the very next year.
And then he was like, I want it vague on purpose that you don't know if you got your rights back or not. And I don't want to do any more clemency meetings for 300 days until I feel like it and failed at my bid to be president. Now you want to have a clemency board meeting. You have folks waiting. So even if it passed, I want to make sure there's clear implementation.
Around that as well. Yeah.
Because I would imagine that implementation piece took time even in Colorado. Right? Because it's still a Schedule I drug, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, ideally, JoJo Dancer would take it off of Schedule I.
In a perfect world, yes. In a perfect world.
But I think that'll happen when big pharmaceutical companies demand it. But that's another story.
So I know the podcast bros are gonna kill me. Are gonna kill me for this one. So I don't want for it to be misconstrued that we think the singular issue that Black men are going to come in droves to the ballot in 2024 is going to be this recreational marijuana ballot initiative. However,
let's be real, it's a lot of white folks that's loving this too, right?
Exactly.
And there's studies showing who gets the licenses and who don't, who gets shut out. Right. And I also want expungements for our brothers and sisters incarcerated over it. Like, like in Illinois. Like, there needs to be some expungements happening.
So how do we have this conversation with Black men? Not just around that ballot initiative, but also the repo rights ballot initiative.
Don't get me started. Really knowing how women's bodies work, that's one. Yeah. But, again, it's a healthcare argument. I doubt you want your significant other passing away because of some archaic law that would make her wait out in the parking lot until it's really bad to get care. Because doctors aren't sure what to do because they don't want to get in trouble or go to jail for providing abortion services. Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to the mother's life. So, it's a really, really good conversation for Black fathers. There are instances where their abortions are necessary in terms of the mother's health. Like, right. And I'm sure these fathers out here don't want to lose their wives, literally bleeding out because the doctors don't know if they can give care. So, again, it's a healthcare argument to be made, right? And if they're on a roll to attack birth control, like this whole movement to say the women should get off birth control, I think it was Ben Shapiro's raggedy ass. About women should get off of birth control. It scrambles your brain. Another man who has no idea about women's bodies speaking on birth control, but God forbid the FDA approved male birth control, you wouldn't take it.
Turns into liberals.
Because if I said a vasectomy is mandatory for you, you wouldn't like it. Even though it's reversible and covered by health insurance. Right?
While abortions aren't.
We're in the fight to get birth control covered by health insurance. Right? Like he out of his mouth said it scrambles the female brain. Like are you kidding me?
Oh my God.
You could die of a heart attack if you took the blue pill. But did that stop you?
Not at all.
Taking it? It did not. It was worth the risk, wasn't it? Right. So, and just and women have every right to decide that they want hormonal and non-hormonal birth control. Like, just don't be out here lying. Mm-hmm. And birth control has side effects. They literally tell you what they are. There are also non-hormonal options for women who don't want to go that route. But like, don't as a man, don't sit up in here and talk about, oh, it'll scramble your brain. You should get off of it. Like the craziest shit comes out of this, and it's him. But I've also heard this in other spaces with so-called reasonable individuals, because you were looking at TikTok.
And TikTok was the lay of the land.
Like, I'm sorry. You know how I feel about that. I'm like, well, you gonna use a condom, brother?
I mean, you know,
because we need to have that conversation.
They make those. They make those, and they're pretty effective in most cases,
right?
To preventing these things. I just
like, you want us off of birth control? You gonna start using condoms? Like, but you know, I had a conversation though, right? Like, I had a conversation about, you know, its usage rates pre-COVID, before COVID, after COVID. Do we post Dobbs? That's a study I want to see.
I absolutely want to see that.
Since you're so worried about us on birth control, all of a sudden.
When you're wrong, Ryan, I'm gonna tell you're wrong, and I've yet to tell you. I've yet to tell you in this segment or period in most cases. Like I don't know why.
Or that birth control causes abortions. That's the other one I've been seeing on the internet, on Al Gore's internet. Excuse me, Beyonce internet. Like, huh? One, yes. While I'm glad science is finally looking at, oh, maybe we need to study women's bodies like we do men's. You know, because that's part of the problem. A lot of this bullshit is coming out because Tommy Tuberville clearly showed he didn't know how IVF worked.
At all.
That's part of the problem. But just to get back to your question around, you know, Black men, like you start with these Black fathers, you know, I mean, single Black men too, but like, do you really want to watch the person you love die unnecessarily because of laws in place, new laws in place, that could threaten her life?
Absolutely.
So, but I mean, again, I'm not a Black man. You know, I'm outside the club looking in. So I just think having the conversation at all is the first step. So, because a lot of times I think what the problem is in this country, the realm of child rearing and birth and all of that excludes dads.
Yes.
Like, we're a country that believes that's only a woman's job, even though I can sit here and tell you it takes two. Like, it takes two people, not make the baby, but raise the child. I can give all the economic reasons. Like, we're not in a situation now where one income is enough to raise a family, all the things. But like, we are a country that, you know, paternity leave is controversial. You're a man, you don't need paternity leave. Yeah, you do. Having a newborn in the house, it's going to take both of y'all.
You absolutely do.
Yes.
Like, you absolutely do. Shout out to the kid.
Yeah.
Shout out to the kid. Woke baby.
Like, goddaughter.
You know.
Woke baby.
I needed that time.
Yeah.
I absolutely needed that time.
This idea that it's all us on us is ridiculous. They say parenting for a reason. So we've been conditioned to also think that as a society that children are the realm of women only, and it's not. Like, you know.
And shout out to the fact that the day that this episode actually drops is April the 11th, which is the first birthday. Listen, I wore
this Can't Go Half for a reason.
That wasn't even my intent. So shout out to Pop Wagner. You know what I'm saying? All day. But it's also the first day of Black Maternal Health Week. So, I mean, good subject to discuss and good way to end this What We Talm Bout segment, because this one was definitely well needed. And I appreciate you indulging me in this particular space and moment. Now, let's get right into it. I have the distinct honor and privilege of interviewing my good friend, Memphis bred, Orlando led. Now DC is home. Senior policy manager for Black Voters Matter, Rhyane Wagner. So Ryan, we do this thing before we start any interview or start the next segment after what we talking about. When we have a guest on, we allow the guest to give 2 distinctive top 5s. So the first top five is oh no, I'm going to give Ryan a very distinctive top 5. So Ryan is from the great city of Memphis, Tennessee. Ryan, who are your top 5 Memphis artists?
I had a feeling you were going to ask me about music. Okay. I'm 39 and doing fine. I'll be 39 in May, so this is probably going to date me. I grew up in terms of rap music, it was a lot of Tila, Playa Fly, 3-6 Mafia, Project Pat, Gangsta Boo, Lil Chat. Shout out to Glow because I'm loving all the success she's having. Duke Deuce is also in there. But Memphis is also known for soul music too.
Yes.
So it's definitely a lot of Al Green. We love Al Green in Memphis. He's like our play uncle in our heads. Okay.
Shout out to the Reverend Al.
Reverend Al Green. He's my favorite, one of my favorites. Technically, Stevie Wonder is my favorite, but he's not from Memphis. But those, in terms of rap music, those are my go-tos. Mm-hmm. That's my election day set list in many ways. It will be part of my election set list this year.
Absolutely.
It's appropriate. Whoop That Trick is appropriate.
Very much so. Very much. Absolutely. Because some tricks need to be whooped this year.
I'll be remiss if I didn't mention that Tina Turner is a Tennessee treasure before she was a national treasure, Nutbush, Tennessee.
Nutbush, yeah.
And quiet as it kept, Black folks love us some Dolly Parton too. Jolene is in there. I feel like I'm missing. Oh, the Barcades. How could I not? Barcades, and not just because my Papa Bear and James Alexander were tight. I grew up around a lot of the Barcades music. Still listen to it quiet as it's kept.
Yeah.
The Staple Singers. Stax Records, shout out to Stax Records.
Yes.
Kirk Whalum. Kenneth Whalum too. The Whalum boys are quite talented. That's just like a running list. And then my family was definitely solidly Prince super fans. We love Michael Jackson, and I'm sure a lot of Black folks have this. It's like the Little Luther, Big Luther argument. I have to say that between my brother, my mom, my Aunt Sonia, we were definitely Prince. They got like prime. I got Prince when he was beefing with Warner Brothers and he had Slave on his face and
yes.
New Power Generation. I got that Prince. They like got, they tell me stories about his shows.
They got Prince. They got controversy.
They got, like, I'm Rick James, bitch, Prince.
That one, yes.
Like, Morris Day of the Time and, like, that whole... So, I got... I don't want to say sanitized, because I remember him on MTV with the assless chaps on. or it was the yellow. He hit the ass out of it. Like
I just really want people to remember
just,
there were these pants that
Prince was
existed.
ahead of his time in so many ways. Okay. And, I consider him one of the guitar Super Saiyans, if you will. He
Mhm.
doesn't get credit as much for that as I think he should. Like, he should be in there with Jimmy Page and Eddie Van Halen, and because he was a jack of all trades, right?
Listen, and shout out
Yeah.
to the video that always gets circulated around
With
social
Tom
media.
Petty?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the one. Like
Like,
always
held
the one
his
for me.
own, no problems. What was it, 12 instruments he could play well? So, and you don't see that often. They don't build them like that often or anymore. Although our generations has some talented folks in it,
Yeah.
but like 70s and 80s, we just churning them out, just these legends. So, but in terms of Memphis, those are it's very much centered around rap music in the city. A-Ball and MJG, can't believe I forgot them. I can't believe I did that. But I'm always gonna say 3 6 Mafia first, but like Playa Fly, nobody needs nobody.
Mm-hmm.
All I need is me and my dogs. So fuck all of y'all. Old. That's me.
Listen, I need for y'all to understand that Ryan is really Memphis out here. Like really Memphis out here. So your other top 5 is top 5 Black organizers that influence you to be in the space that you're in now.
Ooh. I don't know if I have a top 5. Because when I started, I didn't really have anybody that could show me the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't speak to having a top 5 because I
And it don't have to be organizers that like you have directly worked with.
like I hate the word influencer. So I'll say people that I think kind of shape conversations. Maybe.
That pretty much shaped you as an organizer. Like,
ooh. So I keep, I love me some Michael Eric Dyson. Like,
yes.
the brother had a whole class on Tupac. He's not an organizer per se, but like just some of the infusion of hip hop with political conversation was huge for me in my development, and it spoke to me in ways that maybe traditional political spaces didn't. I love Angela Davis, the Queen.
Yes.
She was speaking on Palestine before many of the new people showing up. Just learning about Asada Shakur when I was younger, Afeni, like just her ability to win her case by herself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's more than just Tupac's mom, right? Like, she was this force of nature within the Black Panther Party. I had a lot of bell hooks in my life, a lot of Audre Lorde, a lot of Zora Neale Hurston, my mother had me reading quite a bit. So I guess it's more of like authors.
Yeah.
More so than organizers, because I had to, nobody was showing me the way. I didn't intern with an elected official. I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants because I mean, now organizers, activists, movement, space folks, social justice, like there wasn't a word for that in that way. Like there is now where there's multiple lanes young people can join.
Yeah.
And it's completely divergent from, working in the mayor's office or working for an elected official, which I knew then I had no interest in working for an elected official. I knew that from the start. So I did a lot of electoral organizing, but I knew that I had no interest in that side of the work. Like briefly I wanted to work for the White House. Briefly I wanted to work for Congress. I have no interest in that now. I mean, that didn't last long.
It's
Because
and
I
so
wanted
what?
to be in a space that allowed me to be myself and be authentic and transparent. And in many ways, elected office is a cage, a gilded cage, but a cage.
Yeah.
And so all of that led up to what I do now. And as I've had so many people ask me to run for office, I have no fucking interest in it. Like, that's how much I cussed. I have no fucking interest in being in the work that I do now, the connections I've made, I like being able to be my authentic self and not have to worry about, being vilified for it in that way. I rock with Amanda Seals. I rock with Lene, parking lot pimping. That's what I
Listen,
call it. The parking lot.
listen, I'm keep it real, but I'm keep it brief. Shout out to that.
Yes. Jamil Hill, like it just varies, right? Like I love me some Jamil Hill. And then when I was much younger, it was Stuart Scott. So it's not just organizing. It's like my pop culture folks.
Yeah.
They're kind of the ones that speak voice to power and have conversations that normally wouldn't happen in certain circles, because you gotta play it safe or whatever the fuck. Like I hate it. Like I feel like I'd have to play it too safe in electoral spaces, and that's just not who I am. You know me by now, and my allergy to hoteps too. So
We both have
so I don't have a top 5 in terms of organizing space. But I will shout out my peers, my hustle sister Danielle, Jasmine, Bernie Clark, just folks that I have seen. I remember when we work for Barack Obama in 12, and just
shout out to Jasmine Bernie Clark.
Yeah, like just people I worked in the campaign space with that I have seen do great things. I am genuinely happy for them, and none of that, I wouldn't be where I am. I'm gonna speak for me if I hadn't done that electoral work first. And it's a grind. Don't get me wrong. Right. And there's I left it because it was leading to burnout. But I ultimately found my purpose and calling, because I don't do this because I do this because I love it. This is for me, my purpose.
Yeah.
So, and if you're not doing it for that, you just collecting a check, this work will eat your ass up.
All the way up. And once again, shout out to our homegirl, Jasmine Bernie Clark, the first lady, Jasmine Bernie Clark, who has stepped away from Equal Ground Education Fund for a little bit to become the state director of the Biden-Harris campaign. Like, I'm just, I feel like for me, that shows that, to me anyway, that shows just how much, this current administration feels that Florida is still in play in all things politics, because I went and hired a Black woman to,
I mean, and so goes the South, so goes the rest of the country. These folks gonna learn.
They are.
Like, it's folks like, Anisha Hardy out of Alabama. It's folks out. It's Black and brown women that don't get the notoriety that they should in this work. Okay. At these coalition tables, at these, and I'm sure I'm missing folks that have inspired me. Like, and many of them are still friends. And I wish continued success, but Black women, We're doing the work and we're leading the work. Okay. Don't let the news fool you.
So this was going to initially be one of my ending questions, but I feel like this would be a great start question. So we get these, I know it happens down here a lot in Florida, and you've heard it too. The most recent time period that has happened in, I want to say it was a few months ago. I was on Twitter and I saw David Hogg over at the Parkland kids, Movement for Our Lives. So he stated that Florida needs a Stacey Abrams to come to Florida. So Florida needs Stacey Abrams to come to Florida and fix what we have down here. So
Bless his heart.
it's always the thing of Stacey Abrams needs to come to Florida to get to get Black politics together in Florida, or just to get politics together in Florida. So my question to you, and I'm gonna give my viewpoint on this. My question to you is, why is that such a problematic thing to say?
It presumes that the only role of value we play as Black women is to save this goddamn country from itself. We've done it historically because we have to do it to survive, right? Like, but the idea that we must, like, it bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are Black women doing the work and have done the work in Florida that he is not acknowledging. And I don't know if that's because he doesn't know who they are, which is fair. You know, you can't knock somebody for not knowing who folks are. But I've seen it. Jasmine Rogers. Like, I could go down, Maya Brown. I could go down the list. Like, it's Black women in Florida already doing work who need the support and the resources, because let's keep it a buck. Black groups on the ground are woefully under-resourced.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of these presidential dollars that do come to Florida get eaten up by white-led organizations.
Yes. You
know, and so it dismisses the work already happening that's being led by Black women in this state. And let Stacey do what she want to do, being an author. She has given quite a bit to the state of Georgia. Why the hell would she want to deal with our asses in Florida? I say that I have to remind myself I'm in DC now, but still I care about what's going on. Right? Stop asking Black people, Black women to save you from yourself.
And I think one of
Florida's problem historically has been that the Democratic Party in the state has not, one, they haven't been listening to organizers on the ground, been through a few party chairs. It's been chaotic and messy.
Very.
You're not listening to, like, you're not, it's a disconnect somewhere, and it's like you're not building the pipeline. The fact that we had that there was a fight to get support for Andrew Gillum, and you complaining about turnout and what we didn't do. I don't want to hear that on these calls.
And
Black people turned out.
And shout out to our last guest that was on here, Sean Shaw, the incomparable Sean Shaw,
That's my friend.
who explained just how much of a struggle that it was for not only Andrew to get support, but him to get support in his race for Attorney General that same year. And I think also people don't understand that different states have nuanced ways of how you have to organize in those states. You cannot organize in Florida the same way you would organize in Georgia. You cannot organize.
You know, Jamil, Florida is, we've always said it, Black in Florida means so many things. We have a huge Caribbean diaspora.
Yep.
That's Black. We got Afro-Latinos in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
That like hell, they might feel like neither group is accepting.
Right.
I don't want to speak for, a whole community, but
No, because it is it's Afro Latinx people in Florida who some identify as being Black, some don't identify
yes.
as being Black. So you got to deal with
And
that nuance as well.
this brewing fight about, I think it was the Office of Management is something that's I guess they're putting Latino as a race, and that's causing conflict, especially with Afro Latinos around. It's like Latino is not a race. Like that's gonna be a the conversation needs to be had, but like it's like Hispanic was added to the census in the 70s, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken, like to just as a catch-all. Like they're finally changing. If you were from, I believe if you were from the Middle East, you had to put white. It's wild. The census has to have these nuanced conversations about race,
Mhm.
ethnicity, and nationality. And generally speaking, most Americans get that confused: nationality, ethnicity, and race, right? So Florida's a microcosm of many different cultures, and so you have to organize accordingly. You need Spanish voter registration forms, you need Creole forms. You want to make sure people have language access in ways in some states that don't necessarily have to think about it per se. They should, but
Right. 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 And once again, like we shouted out a couple, but shout out to the awesome work that people like Jasmine Rogers, Lindsay Pollard, Maya Brown, again, Jasmine Bernie Clark, Angie Nixon, Michelle Rayner, uh,
Chevron.
shout out to, April Nubian Roberts, Haley Morissette, uh,
Danny.
listen, Danny Boo, shout out to Danny Boo, it's
Roxy, all our Black women
Corinne
showing up.
Freeman.
Like it's just
It's a lot of
it's
Black women out here today.
aggravating because Democrats will take your damn ideas too and then run with them and not try to fairly compensate you. There's that part. Like, oh, that's a good idea. I'll take it. Like, so they're because we already know what we're gonna get from these MAGA cult members, right?
Right.
So it's frustrating, but not surprising that, oh, we need a Stacey Abrams of Florida. You got them. You have them.
And don't have conversations. Y'all got them, but don't have conversations with them.
Like, stop talking about us outside the club.
Because y'all definitely inside all the time.
Yeah.
Like constantly. I mean, I've personally learned so much from a lot of the women, from a lot of the women that were named. Jonelle Edwards, Naila Summers. Like, it's so many that we can name that haven't been named. That's just doing quality work in Florida to where that shouldn't even be a conversation that should be had.
And it's and with Stacey Abrams, like, I'm sure Stacey trying to live her life, her best life. Like
The best life.
Okay. And with the conversations trying to get her to run the DNC, maybe she don't want to do that. Like, we're trying to put Black women in a box. That's another thing. Like, stop doing that. And even some in the electoral work, they will just put you in field or grassroots work. Like, some of us are good at comms. Some of us are good at policy, like deciding where you fit for you, instead of get like the opportunity, like given an opportunity. And the other problem is you'll have incumbent Black electeds nationally that will bring in white DC consultants. And they're like, well, we can't find the Black ones. That's because you're not looking.
You got to come down here and dig.
Yeah.
And do the work. Like, actually do your job.
That's the case for every single state in the South. It is Black organizers all across the board, and it's showing up in different ways. It's just, some of it's just lazy thinking in in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I don't fault David Hogg, but I'd assume he means well, but it's Black people in Florida that are doing the work.
And
So
Black.
we don't need our version of Stacey Abrams. They're already there.
We got phenomenal Black women that's doing the work.
Yeah. And so
and also I think another important thing to point out is it's not going to be an overnight thing.
Well, even with conversations, it's so many more dope Black women, and this is not a knock on Stacey Abrams, other than Stacey Abrams doing work in Georgia.
So I didn't say UFO.
I mean, even beyond her, like it's it's like they pick one of us and like, I've deemed you my favorite. So I can use you as an example in my conversations to show people I support Black women. And it's like, you guys support all of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, and like I said, it's a lot of, I've had these conversations with a lot of folks in the work who ain't in it for the work. They're in it for the fame and the power and the prestige.
Right.
Again, like I said before, if that is your only goal, this work will eat your ass up too.
Alive.
And it will show real quickly where your loyalties are and where your focus is at.
So let's discuss the time period that I think is important to the work that the both of us have done, and that's 2020. You came in a little bit before me.
Yeah, I joined in 2019, right before the world shut down.
Yes, and I joined right as the world shut down.
Yeah,
and because it's funny. So May 8th, 2020 was my first day at Black Voters Matter. 2 weeks after my first day, George Floyd happened. And I'll never forget that day, because you called me and was like, hey, I think they finna send us an email to discuss this George Floyd situation. I was like, George Floyd? And you were like, you hadn't looked at your phone yet? Looked at my phone. And then the email came in, and we sat on this call for like an hour and a half just discussing what were we going to do around this. But the first hour of the call literally was, how is everybody feeling after watching this? Because we couldn't go straight into how we gonna organize around this without dealing with the fact we just saw this man die, and in the manner of how he died.
Yeah.
And so for us, first off, one of the things that people need to understand as far as the organizing, the organizing in Florida for Black Voters Matter, everybody thinks there was this really strong, extravagant team effort of multiple people doing the work for Black Voters Matter in the state of Florida in 2020. It's literally the two people that you see on this podcast right now. We did everything. Like, everything.
I don't even know. I don't, like, some of that blur. I'm like, how did we do all of that?
Listen, I ask myself that every day. Like, because like I had all of North Florida. I didn't have just like a particular piece of North Florida. I had everything up until Jacksonville. And then you and I shared Jacksonville. And then you had all the rest. Central and South. We made it work, sis. I listen because
I mean, I wish. I mean, that's probably its own episode. How we survived. It should be called "Surviving Florida" Pandemic Edition.
yes.
It should be a series because Florida is one of those states, formerly purple states, that if you can survive in Florida doing politics, wherever you land in the space, I mean, everything else is going to be fine.
Right.
You're going to be able to tolerate the politics of DC because you already know what corruption looks like.
Yeah.
You already know what it's like to have one of the parties running one house, one of the parties running the other, or a supermajority in the case of Florida, where they literally
one
are
party is running everything,
running roughshod on everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was, I guess, what aggravates me now. So many people, oh, we want to help, we want to Black Lives Matter and blah, blah, blah. And we want to give money. And now 2024, you acting like racism it's not sexy anymore. We can't. And that's what bothers me to no end. Like, we don't have the luxury of, let's move on to a different topic this year. Like, it's just all oh, we hear you, we see you. In many ways, is a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
And part of me kind of knew that in the back of my head, especially with these white-led national groups. Soon it was not long, the newer ones,
Mm-hmm.
like the ones that are just waking up to, oh my God, there's all these racial issues in the US, as if it started in 2020. We're like, oh, how can we help? And then like now it's like, DEI bans and affirmative action. Like,
we might want to stray away from that. And I'm like, stray away,
colorblind. Okay. So, you have groups being sued for like, how dare you only target Black and brown people with your scholarships?
So one of the things that happened after the election, there was this map of Florida that circulated around social media. The map showed the gain in votes for Biden and Trump in 2020 in comparison to Hillary and Trump in 2016. So most of that map was blue considerably in the Panhandle area. It was just super dark blue in Duval. And it was considerably blue around the I-4 corridor. I always like to point out, and both you and I did in numerous meetings with senior staff for said organization we work. I always like to point out that those particular areas that were just named, one of, if not the only organization that was doing a lot of work in those areas, were the partners that represent Black voters matter, especially in the Panhandle. What can you speak to as far as, because we always like to say, and we always like to tell our partners that we define wins a different way from everyone else at BVM. What can you speak to as it pertains to the win that we got essentially in Florida in 2020? What can you speak to that, and how can we amplify and build that win up some more for 2024?
You can't be afraid to go to a place because you think it's a lost cause. I'll say that, right? Part of the reason Georgia went the way it went is because of the rural organizing that was done. You know, you got to get outside of Atlanta and the surrounding counties and do work, right? Pushing past this idea that Black people only reside in certain parts of those states is another, you know, you got to go to the panhandle. If you are truly in the business of moving the needle forward or flipping an area one way or the other, you can't be scared to go there. And that sometimes means leaving the major cities that generally lean blue, if you will, for lack of a better term, right? And our group, and again, you can't tie yourself to an elected exclusively, or like it's about issues for most people. Politicians come and go. And I've always said it's a lot of politicians out here, not a lot of public servants. Right. And it shows in many ways. Especially with redistricting. Some of these electeds that lost their district, maybe you should have leaned into your self-preservation way sooner.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Florida's infamous for making backroom deals around these maps. And so now you have a governor that didn't give a good goddamn about those previous discussions and agreements. He was going to have his maps the way he wanted them. But I digress. I'm sorry. I don't know where I was going with that. But it helps.
We're going to a great place. That's where you was going.
It helps when you are issues focused and you are about building transformational relationships. Much of the Black community, our community's gripe is y'all show your asses up in here at the last minute demanding things from us. Right. When we couldn't even get one item from you. Oh, we're the lesser of two evils. Okay. And you still showed your ass up in here last minute. And like I said before, that's no longer going to be good enough.
Right.
You have to go out. Like I keep telling folks all the time, this idea that rural automatically means white needs to change. And I think that's what, you know, one of the things we do well is, nope, it's Black people in these rural areas, these rural communities. It's called the Black Belt in the South for a reason, right? Alabama needed those extra districts. As Black as Alabama really is, I would say the same thing for Mississippi. Like, no. You know, Louisiana, you know, obviously we had to fight those battles in court, but here we are. We fought them. And communities need to know you're there for them 24/7. And so I think that's what, you know, and also folks they're so used to being in these transactional relationships. So when a group comes in or folks come in to be in community that don't come from that lens, it's like, and I would argue there's some suspicion too, right? Because some of those folks that come in at the last minute demanding things from the Black community will lead with the money. Because they know a segment of us will take it.
Yes.
But I think what worked for us is we're here beyond election cycles. We're here beyond any one candidate, which is why, you know, we don't really endorse, like, because politicians come and go.
Yep.
And on the rare occasion, you might get a really, really good one that is a believer in that role being a public servant versus I'm just here as a power money grab. And that's a lot of that, unfortunately, that this is just a stepping stone for power and prestige in another place. And so communities often get left behind and forgotten about. So, but I think being there beyond any one election cycle is what helps us. Also, they don't come into these communities telling them what to do and telling them how to be and how to show up. That's the other thing. That, you know, even legacy orgs and not just political parties have a bad fucking habit of stop doing that.
Right.
There are people who've been in these communities decades that mind you, you stand to learn from. Like the ways in which I had to learn the political landscape in Florida, I wouldn't have been able to really adjust if it had not been for the elders that I ingratiated myself to that knew cities like Orlando backwards and forwards. Right. And you know what I'm talking about. That she was, you know, she would call me her Ryan.
Listen, shout out to Miss Beverly.
Miss Beverly Neal.
Listen.
You know, even with Krishanda, like making sure I knew Jacksonville and the political dynamics. And, you know, because Jacksonville, you know, was red in many ways, right? Even down to the city, you know, city
council. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So I say all of that to say that's a very long-winded answer. You got to show up in space willing to listen, you know, because there's listening to react and listening to hear, you know, and so that's also how you stay out of trouble in some ways.
For real.
If you're someone that's not from, like, I was not born and raised in Florida, and I knew that there might be a little bit of suspicion around me. You know, I don't, you know, hey, you're not from here. You know, I'd probably have the same reaction if I was still in Memphis. You're not from here. What you know about us?
Mm-hmm.
We're not Nashville. That's a thing, FYI. Like, we're not Nashville, okay? So that would be my response to those questions. Is just treating a place with nuance, acknowledging you don't know everything, leaning in on the elders that have been in the space, and know that some of them might push back and be like, you a young Thundercat in the room, you know, and just, you know how I feel about gatekeeping too, but sometimes it's just like, you just got here, you're a young pup, sit down and listen. Because, you know, I'll say something if somebody tells me to wait my turn. Like, I don't have anything to offer as a younger person. I was told I was an elder millennial, so I don't know how long I can keep saying that. It's like, first of all, rude. Somebody said 1994 is vintage, and I felt attacked. Like, watch your mouth. 1994 was yesterday. Shut up.
When you got whole documentaries,
like 11.
When you got whole documentaries made around a time period in life when you were a teenager, and these are things that you frequently went to every year, like I felt triggered by the Freaknik documentary. I just need for y'all to really understand that, because I was just like,
I was triggered by the cell phone exhibit at the Natural History Museum here in DC. I literally counted on my hands the versions of the Motorola, Nokia phones I've had over the years. Okay, especially that Razor phone that I wanted so bad.
I probably would cry.
Okay.
I
wanted it in pink. Okay. I wanted that phone. I begged my mama for that phone. I think I ended up getting like a Cricket phone. But let me tell you, it held a charge for 3 days. You know, acknowledging phones now are basically tiny computers.
Shout out.
But, you know, that's an aside.
So, last question for the episode, which is always the last question for every episode. Rhyane Wagner, what is your vision of a Florida where Black people are able to live in freedom, equity, and authenticity?
Ron DeSantis being gone. MAGA's not having full control of the state legislature. And generally, like, leave Black folks the fuck alone. Leave us alone. We want to be able to raise our families, live full lives, self-actualization, all the things, self-determination, like everybody else. But the top two is Ron needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
And this MAGA cult that has taken over, quite frankly, Republicans have run Florida for 30 years now, I think it is. So that's not new. But this is different. This is a person who is obsessed with the myth of America, if you will. The myth of American exceptionalism, which historically has been harmful to Black people, Black and brown people, immigrant communities, all the things. He is physically trying to stop his state from being what it has always, in my opinion, been in the last 30 years, a very diverse, culturally diverse state. So those would be my top two things. But, generally speaking, leave Black people the fuck alone. Leave us alone. Right? Like, white supremacy at minimum is about control. That's what my ideal. And run us our money. And Tubmans. I don't know if that's still happening or not. But
I mean, yes, where are the
pay
Tubmans?
us fairly and equitably.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's just, my small three things.
I need my Tubman 20s as well.
Thank you. Run me my money.
Rhyane, as always, it's always great to have these conversations with you. It's always great to have these conversations. Even more great to have them on this platform that we have, which comes out every second and fourth Thursday, right here on the MPN network, or go to all your streaming outlets and just pull up BLKFLA. So thank you again, as always.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. This Jamal Steele showing y'all love and appreciation for joining us on this BLKFLA experience. Stay free, stay blessed, and continue to get acquainted with greatness. We are out.
If revolution was a movie, I'd be theme music. Time to ignite what I spit is lighter fluid. Stepping into a fixed way, such a glorious design. Marching into the biggest fight of our lives. Time to spark the revolution.